Hi guys, it's Elle from the Mage system. Long time no see. I know I haven't made a video in a while, and I think I pretty much explained why I haven't been making very many videos, but yeah, I got all this shit I'm doing. And I feel less depressed now, but I honestly just don't have a whole lot of opportunities to make videos, but I really want to. There's a lot of stuff I want to say, and I really like talking to the community a lot. Anyways, welcome. Today I wanted to talk about fake disorder cringe. So a while ago in my YouTube recommended, I kept getting these videos that were like fake disorder TikTok cringe compilation, and it was a variety of disorders, but a lot of them were DID, where people would take individuals on TikTok who, like, there was a DID TikTok account, and it would be like a Meet My Alters video or something like that, where each alter would come on and say hi, or they'd be doing their makeup or something. And it was supposed to be fake disorder cringe. But when I watched the videos, I was like, I don't see what looks super fake about this. I don't know. Some of them were silly, but you have to keep in mind that a lot of the people posting them are like teenagers. And teenagers inevitably end up looking silly when they do anything. I know that in the trans gatekeeping era, which is still happening, where real transsexuals would gatekeep like trans teenagers who identified as non-binary because they thought, you're not really trans, you're making us all look bad. And I feel like that's sort of what's going on, except not really, because they're usually made by people who don't have DID. Of course non-binary teenagers look silly, because all teenagers look silly, right? But it doesn't mean they're not non-binary, and it doesn't mean they're less valid than you. Teenagers with DID look silly, you know? And they're in awkward phases, but it doesn't mean they don't have DID. That's the first. This is a ramble, by the way. I have not scripted this. I literally had like some time, and I was like, oh, I want to film a video right now. So anyways, like when I watch them, it's just each alter coming on and saying hi. And it's like the people who are calling this fake are usually people that just aren't very educated on DID at all. And sometimes people with DID do it, but those people with DID aren't even that educated on DID, or they've only heard about DID from people who don't have DID. And so let me just take a second to talk about professionals, okay? So the two genres of people who know a lot about DID are people with DID and professionals. And in my opinion, to get a complete image of DID, you have to look at both of those groups of people. Because professionals who don't have DID, when they talk about DID, they think it's interesting. It's their job. And because they think it's interesting, the things that they talk about when they talk about DID are often the most extreme cases, because that's the most interesting. So there's often a lot of cherry picking whenever we look in like medical stuff, where they talk about cases where alters all hate each other and they black out for weeks, because that is a reality for some people. And it's the most interesting sort of cases to look at whenever you're a professional, and you just find it interesting. You want to look at the most crazy stuff. And it's not something you're like consciously doing, but you know, you have to realize that DID is a spectrum. There are some systems that do have horrible communication, to be honest, and their alters just don't want to talk to them, and every single time they switch, it's a blackout, and they're super different from them, and they act super different from them. And then some systems are more like a tight-knit group of siblings that grew up in a traumatic environment together, and they can connect with one another, and there isn't amnesia often even. And it entirely depends on the individual and the trauma they had, because every single disorder you'll see is a spectrum. It's not just like you're a completely normal neurotypical person and then you have severe DID. There's a spectrum along there, right? Some systems are going to be able to have the ability to coordinate a TikTok video where a few of their alters come on and say hi. That's not that crazy for a lot of people to do. Yeah, it's just kind of, for some people, it's just kind of like getting every member in their household to come and say hi on a video. Like, it's not that hard. I think some people think for you to have DID, you have to be so dysfunctional that that's just not possible, which is just not true. A lot of people with DID can't do that, but some people can. Another thing I see is like when a system has like a British alter, they think they're faking. And I understand how that would make sense to you. Like, I understand that. Like, it seems way out there, you know? But I've seen like pretty well-respected systems of British people where they were American alters. And I don't know, it kind of makes sense to where you would have an alter with a different accent. Because if you know about the formation of DID, when alters are formed, it's oftentimes based on what a child wishes they could be to escape from trauma. And I know British doesn't sound like a great escape, all right? Like, if I was British, I would... But like, you know, people have alters that are dogs, because sometimes when you're going through a bunch of trauma, you either, one, feel like you're being treated like a dog, or sometimes you're a kid and you're just like, I wish I was a dog, I wish I was a dog, I wouldn't have to be dealing with any of this right now. You know, just that kind of subconscious mentality is what ends up getting alters like that to split off. Where if you watch a lot of TV as a kid, and you know the way you think about British people when you're a kid, and you're just like, that's silly. I don't know where this video is going. I'm never like a coordinated person in what I'm talking about, okay? But do you get what I'm saying? Like, when you're a kid and you have a child's brain, sometimes your brain creates things that are just very different from what you are and are very, like, silly because it makes you feel very distanced from the trauma. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a child and you watch a lot of superhero movies and stuff and you're dealing with trauma and your brain needs to create a way to feel like you can protect yourself, it might create an alter that's like a superhero, you know? So it doesn't seem that far off for a brain to create like Cordelia the British princess alter or something like that, you know what I mean? Because you're a child. That's just what your brain does. And I see plenty of British people with like American alters. Like, I know Multiplicity and me, before they integrated, had like an American alter because they used to watch a lot of Disney Channel whenever they were kids. It was like a comfort, and so one of their alters was American. Anyways, I think a lot of the fake disorder cringe just comes from the fact that it's teenagers making these videos because, you know, teenagers make up a lot of the percentage on TikTok. Teenagers are trying to figure out more about themselves, right? They're trying to put the pieces together of who they are. And so people want to talk about the disorders they have. And also, I wanted to add that maybe these teenagers don't have DID. Maybe some of them don't. But I think what's more likely that they're actively faking is that they thought they did, and now they don't. And it's okay to think something and then figure out you're wrong later, because you're just trying to figure it out. Even if you don't have DID, something else is going on. And you know, you have to have space to figure that out. Like, maybe you have depersonalization, derealization disorder, or dissociative amnesia, or BPD, or CPTSD, but you're a kid and you're trying to figure it out and you think it's DID for a bit. You shouldn't be shamed for that. You shouldn't be shamed for being wrong about something, you know? It's not nice. Yeah. A lot of the people in the fake disorder cringe compilation are assigned female at birth, or they're trans, or they're queer, and I want to mention that because these fake disorder cringe compilation videos really reminds me of that grimy, like, 2016 era of the internet where people were, you know, you had like the Pepe meme and like people were making fun of feminism, like feminism is cancer, and they had like cringe compilations where it was just like a bunch of like fat people and like autistic people just existing, and it was like, I don't think this is cringe. I think you just have a lot of prejudice. I think that some of the like bias against these people on TikTok talking about their DID is honestly other aspects about them, you know, that make people think that they're cringe, like automatically. And their little subconscious is anyone who's queer and has dyed hair is automatically cringe. Now, if you have DID, that makes you extra cringe. And I think the reason people think of DID as such a one specific thing and that these teenagers can't be real is because of the movie representations of DID. When people with DID are are represented in movies, it's usually like really extreme. It's usually like super dysfunctional. Oftentimes they're murderers, which is awful. If you think, like, one of the only real cases of DID that's represented in media is Billy Milligan, who was one person with DID who, like, I forget if he was a serial, like, I don't want to trigger anybody, but somebody who did some really bad stuff. People really like to paint DID as just really serious and really bad. And so, and I'll point out again, people with DID are no more likely to hurt anybody than anybody else. It's just people see one person with DID who does a bunch of bad things and they think, oh, it must be because of your DID, which means that people with DID must be really screwed up. People with DID must be murderers, man. And people do it with more than this too. People do it with tic disorders. Like, you see like cringe compilations of people with Tourette's and they have their tics and people think, oh, they must be faking. You don't know that. People have some wild tics out there, you know what I mean? I think a lot of it's not necessarily what they're doing. It's just the fact that it's like younger people with the disorder. If there are adults that have DID and Tourette's, there are definitely children that have DID and Tourette's because you develop DID as a child. Another thing I want to mention is that I saw somebody make a video a while ago on a system who one of their alters had tics and the other ones didn't. And they were talking about how that person might be faking. And I don't know if they came out as faking or whatever, because I do want to mention some people do fake, but you'll never know that unless they say that. Like, you can't diagnose somebody if you don't know them. I don't know if that person was like legitimately faking or not, because I can't remember, but I thought it was curious that one of their alters had tics and the other ones didn't, because the person making the video was like trying to be very impartial, but they were like, from my understanding, tics is a neurological condition and not like super mental, so if you had Tourette's, all of your alters should have Tourette's. And I was thinking, like, I wonder if that is the case, because some alters can have worse vision than different alters. They can have different reactions to medicine. They can have different skin reactions. I've had alters where their skin, like, they couldn't handle the products I usually put on my face. Like, it'd make their skin really red. I know people whose alters where they're like, I swear he can see better than me. I know people online who have had such trauma with having to view something with their eyes to where they have an alter that can't see. Well, Tourette's is sort of a neurological condition. I do believe that stuff like that is a genetic predisposition that is often triggered by unfortunate events. Like OCD. People say that OCD is very much a neurotype and it's very much neurological and purely genetic. And don't get me wrong, like, OCD 1000% always has a genetic component. But I think a lot of times people have like the genes for OCD, but then it gets activated by trauma. You are normal and then somebody does something bad to you, and then you start obsessing, what if I'm a bad person? What if I would do that to somebody that I love? And then you all of a sudden you're locking yourself in the room and locking your pets out of the room because you're afraid you're going to hurt them, when it's just sort of from what happened to you. And I think that could definitely happen from alter to alter, right? Because maybe you didn't experience that trauma of somebody hurting you, but this alter did, and now this alter has that OCD. You know what I mean? Because you don't even remember it. How can you have OCD about something you don't even remember? I don't know, though. I've never met an alter where that was the case. I'm not saying this flat out. I'm just sort of thinking out loud and theorizing, like, what if? I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts, too. Like, if you have this situation I'm describing, or like you just have some ideas about it, I'm really curious, because I don't know. And I don't know like a shit ton about Tourette's, I'm going to be honest, but I was thinking, I feel like when I see people with Tourette's, they usually have trauma. Mostly people with like worse Tourette's. And so I'm thinking, like, I wonder if that could be the case with DID, you know, like one alter experiences trauma and then the other one doesn't. And so this one has Tourette's and the other one doesn't. Because I know some alters have a stutter when other ones don't, and that's completely valid. Some alters just have different language functions than the other ones. Like, if you're bilingual, some bilingual people have alters that don't remember the other language but only remember one. I don't know, this is going way off the rails though. So fake disorder cringe compilations are just not productive or healthy to make, and they're really awful because I want to say that fake claiming a person who actually does have DID is way more harmful than how productive it could be to fake claim someone who's actually faking, right? Because whenever you accuse somebody who actually has DID of faking, it hurts. It doesn't hurt me as much, but a symptom of DID is not believing that you really have DID, because your brain doesn't want you to know that. The whole mechanism is supposed to be a secret to you as a host. So I've definitely known systems who definitely had DID, and they'd come to me sometimes and they'd be like, yeah, I don't think I have it anymore. I think that was stupid. I was just making it up. And I was like, okay, girl. And then like a week later, they're like, yeah, I have DID. I just can't handle it. When you accuse somebody who actually has DID of not having DID, they might just be like, well, shit. We're people that often get pretty hurt by things people say, and definitely feel very, we're often people pleasers. So sometimes when people say things, we often take their word for it, and we often internalize it onto ourselves. So please don't make fake disorder cringe compilations, and please especially don't directly fake claim people. Okay, I really need to go now, so I will see you later.